The silence in the house was a living thing. For 3 years, it had been Alex's constant companion. A suffocating blanket woven from antiseptic smells, hushed phone calls, and the ghost of laughter that once echoed off the walls. Now, the silence was different. It was the taut, humming quiet of a drawn bowstring, waiting for release. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone, as if his gaze alone could force it to ring. Anna was stable, they'd said. Holding on, but stable, was a purgatorial state, a knife's edge between hope and the abyss. They were waiting for a heart. When the phone finally buzzed, vibrating against the polished wood of the table, he and Anna had refinished together, his own heart seized in his chest. Incoming call? Anna. His thumb fumbled, almost dropping the device. Hello, he choked out, his voice raw. Alex. It was her, but not her. Her voice was thin, fragile, as a bird's wing, but beneath the weakness was a tremor of pure, unadulterated joy. Alex. They have it. They have a heart. The world tilted. The air rushed back into his lungs. A dizzying, explosive gasp. Oh my God, Anna, are you serious? The coordinator just left. It's a match. A strong match. They're prepping me now. You need to come. Now, Alex, they said, you need to be here. I'm coming. I'm on my way. I love you. I'm leaving right now. He didn't remember ending the call. He was already moving, his body a machine executing a long-rehearsed drill. Wallet, keys, the worn leather jacket she loved. He grabbed the small go-bag that had been packed by the door for 18 months. A grim sentinel of their vigil. He threw open the front door. The bright afternoon sun, a startling contrast to the gloom of the house, and sprinted towards the garage. And then he stopped. A wall of yellow blocked his path. A Lamborghini Huracan, the color of a toxic chemical spill, was parked directly across the end of his driveway. It wasn't just slightly overlapping. It was a deliberate, perpendicular blockade, its sleek, arrogant nose almost kissing his neighbor's manicured lawn, its tailpipes aimed squarely at his own. It was parked so perfectly it felt like a statement. For a moment, his brain refused to process the image. It was a dream, a hallucination. People didn't do this. Not in this quiet, suburban corner of the world, where the most dramatic event was usually a disagreement over recycling bins. From the house to doors down, the muffled thump of bass-heavy music and a wave of shrill laughter drifted over. A party, of course. New neighbors had moved in last month, the kind who treated the neighborhood like a temporary inconvenience. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through his shock. No, 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 no. He scanned the street. Empty. He couldn't back out. He couldn't get around it. The car was an impassable $1,000,000 insult. Every second was a lifetime. Anna was being prepped for surgery. He could picture her, pale and small in the hospital bed, her hopeful eyes scanning the doorway for him. He ran towards the party house, his footsteps pounding on the pavement. The front door was ajar, spilling noise, and the smell of expensive perfume onto the lawn. He didn't knock. He pushed it open. The scene inside was a caricature of wealth. Sleek, minimalist furniture was dotted with people in designer clothes, holding champagne flutes. They turned as one, their conversations halting, their faces a mixture of surprise and annoyance at his intrusion. He was a creature from another world in his worn jacket and frantic energy. Whose is the yellow Lamborghini? He demanded, his voice louder than he intended. A woman with a severe blonde bob and a face pulled tight by surgery detached herself from a group. She held her glass like a scepter. It might be mine, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Why, you've parked it across my driveway. I need you to move it right now. It's an emergency. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne, her eyes appraising him with open disdain. An emergency, she drawled, a smirk playing on her lips. Did you run out of gray paint for your sad little house? A few of her friends tittered. Rage, hot and blinding, flashed in Alex's vision, but he forced it down. He needed to be calm. He needed her to move the car. Please, he said, the word tasting like ash. My wife is at the hospital. She's about to go into surgery. A heart transplant. I need to be there. He had expected the revelation to change something in her expression. A flicker of empathy, perhaps. A moment of human recognition. He saw nothing. Her face remained a mask of bored entitlement. Oh, a transplant, she said, her voice lilting with mock sympathy. She turned to her friends. He says his wife is having a transplant. She turned back to him. Look, this is a very important party. For my husband, people are here. We can't just be shuffling cars around. I'm sure you can wait a little while. The doctors handle everything, don't they? Wait, Alex's voice cracked. There is no waiting. This is the call. We've been waiting for 3 years. I need to leave now, and I need you to lower your voice, she snapped, her leisurely facade cracking to reveal the hard, ugly core beneath. You've come into my home. You're upsetting my guests, and you're making demands. The car will be moved when I am ready to move it. Perhaps, if you had asked nicely, I am asking. His voice was a raw plea. I am begging you. Please, just give me the keys. I'll move it myself and bring them right back. Absolutely not, she scoffed, clutching her purse to her chest as if he were a common thief. Do you have any idea how much that car is worth? Now, if you'll excuse me, you're killing the mood. She turned her back on him, dismissing him as easily as she would a fly. He was invisible. His desperation, his love for Anna, the reality of his situation, it was all meaningless static to her. He stood there for a heartbeat, frozen in the doorway, the party's noise swelling around him like a tide of indifference. He was nothing. He backed out of the house, the door clicking shut behind him, sealing him back in the quiet street with the immovable yellow monument to selfishness. He looked at the car, then back at his own garage. The seconds were ticking. Away he could call the police, but that would take time, towing even longer. Every official channel was a dead end paved with bureaucracy and delays he couldn't afford. His phone rang again. Hospital main line. His hand shook as he answered. Hello, Mr. Jensen. This is Nurse Davies from the cardiac unit. We were just wondering about your ETA. Dr. Carmichael likes to have family present for the final consult before sedation. I'm on my way, he stammered, his eyes locked on the Lamborghini. I've been delayed. There's a car blocking my driveway? Oh, the nurse said, her professional tone softening with a hint of pity. Well, please try to get here as safely and as quickly as you can. Anna is asking for you. Anna is asking for you. The words broke something inside him. The carefully constructed dam of civility, of patience, of hope, all the frustration of the past 3 years, all the impotent rage at the universe for what it had done to Anna, all the terror of this one single moment slipping through his fingers, it all coalesced and found a target. The acid yellow car dot wasn't just a car anymore, it was a symbol. It was every person who had ever been casually cruel, every obstacle that had ever stood in their way, every ounce of arrogant indifference in the world, solidified and parked across his life. He turned and walked, not to his house, but to his garage. He keyed in the code, and the door rumbled open, revealing his sanctuary, his workshop. Alex was a sculptor. He worked with metal, transforming jagged, forgotten pieces of steel and copper into things of beauty. He took the ugly, the discarded, and gave it form and meaning. His eyes scanned the space. The welding torch in the corner, the tanks of argon and oxygen, the heavy-duty angle grinder on the workbench, the piles of scrap metal, twisted rebar, rusted sheets of Corten steel, jagged spires of old industrial piping. His tools, his medium. An idea, terrifying and sublime, bloomed in the wreckage of his panic. It was insane. It was illegal. It was career suicide, but it was also perfect. She wouldn't move her precious object. Fine. He would transform it. He would make it so much more than a car. He would turn her ugly vanity into a permanent installation. He worked with a speed and ferocity he hadn't felt in years. He wheeled the heavy TIG welder out onto the driveway, its thick cables snaking. Behind it, he dragged the gas tanks, the metal clanging against the concrete. He grabbed his helmet, his gloves, the angle grinder. Then he went for his materials. He started with a long gnarled piece of rebar, bent into a tortured spiral. He positioned it like a horn, rising from the Lamborghini's sleek, carbon fiber hood. He flipped down his welding mask, the world turning a murky green. With a hiss and a brilliant flash of white-hot light, he struck an arc. The smell of ozone and burnt paint filled the air. Molten metal dripped onto the pristine yellow finish, sizzling and hardening, bonding the rusted steel to the Italian super. He wasn't just a... The approaching siren sliced through the cacophony of Beatrice's shrieking and the hum of the welder's transformer. From behind the green-tinted lens of his helmet, Alex saw the world as a distorted, otherworldly stage. The flashing red and blue lights pulsed against the garage door, painting the scene in frantic strokes of color. He laid down one final, perfect bead of molten metal, securing a jagged piece of scrap steel that resembled a lightning bolt to the Lamborghini's passenger side. Quarter panel. Only then did he switch off the torch. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the approaching wail and the ragged sound of his own breathing. He lifted the helmet. The real world rushed back in, sharp and painfully bright. 2 police cruisers had screeched to a halt, boxing in the driveway. 2 officers, a seasoned, weary-looking sergeant and a younger, athletic patrolman, were getting out of the first car, their hands resting cautiously on their holstered weapons. Right there. Arrest him. He's a maniac. He's destroying my property, and he attacked me, Beatrice screeched, pointing a trembling, manicured finger at Alex. Alex didn't move. He stood, feet planted wide amidst the cables and tools, a strange sense of tranquility washing over him. He had passed through the storm of panic and was now in its quiet, unnerving eye. He had made his choice. The consequences were just details. The sergeant, whose namatag read Miller, held up a hand to quiet Beatrice, though his eyes never left Alex. Sir, I need you to step away from the vehicle and the equipment. Slowly, Alex gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He carefully placed the inert welding torch on the concrete and took 2 steps back, his hands held loosely at his sides. He saw the younger officer, Chen, doing a slow circle of the car, his expression, a mixture of professional stoicism and utter bewilderment. Ma'am, what is the situation here? Miller asked, his voice a low, authoritative rumble designed to command control. The situation, Beatrice spat, her voice venomous. Is that this? This troglodyte has taken a blowtorch to my $500,000 car? He assaulted me. I want him in prison. I want to sue him for every pathetic penny he has. Miller glanced at Alex, then back at Beatrice. Did he physically touch you, ma'am? He stormed into my home. He terrified my guests. That's assault. Sir, Miller said, turning his full attention to Alex. What's your side of the story? Her car was blocking my driveway, Alex said, his voice surprisingly steady. I have a life emergency. My wife is being prepped for a heart transplant. I asked her to move it. She refused. Miller's eyebrows flickered. He glanced at the Lambo parked with perfect obstructive arrogance. He looked back at Alex's plain, desperate face. A flicker of something understanding, maybe even sympathy, crossed his features before being suppressed by professional duty. So you decided to do this? Miller asked, gesturing to the bizarre metal chimera that was once a supercar. Referred to her property as an immovable object, Alex stated, a strange lucid logic guiding his words. I am a sculptor. I work with metal. I decided to accept the car as a donation to a new piece. It's a site-specific installation. I call it obstructive entitlement. Officer Chen, who had completed his circuit, came to a stop beside Miller, letting out a low whistle. Sarge, you gotta see this. The welds are actually really good. Beatrice looked as if she might actually explode. Are you kidding me? His welds are good. He has destroyed my car. Arrest him. Just then, a man in a tailored linen suit and shoes that cost more than Alex's monthly mortgage payment strode down from the party house. He was handsome, with silvering temples and a look of calculated calm. This was clearly the husband, the man for whom the party was being thrown. Beatrice, for God's sake, what is all this screaming? He said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. He took in the scene, the police, the mangled car, the welder, and his jaw tightened. My God, Marcus, look what he did. Beatrice wailed, rushing to her husband's side. He's insane. Marcus. Thorne's eyes locked on Alex, cold and analytical. He wasn't hysterical like his wife. He was assessing damage, calculating liability. He saw a problem that needed to be managed. Officer Marcus said, addressing Miller directly, man to man. Clearly there has been a significant incident here. This man has caused an immense amount of damage. My wife is obviously over. Let's handle this cleanly. We want to press full charges for vandalism and destruction of property. We'll let our lawyers handle the rest. He was trying to take control, to frame it as a simple transaction, a crime, a punishment. Money would fix it, but he was missing the point entirely. It isn't vandalism, Alex repeated, his voice gaining a strange intensity. Vandalism is destruction. This is creation. I have fundamentally changed the nature of the object. It is no longer a car. It is a work of art. Marcus Thorne stared at him as if he were an insect. You're delusional. Alex's phone began to ring. The sound cut through the tension with jarring urgency. He pulled it from his pocket. Hospital main line. His blood ran cold. He looked at Miller. I have to take this. Miller gave a curt nod. Alex answered, his ear pressed to the phone, his back turned slightly to the unfolding drama. Alex, Dr. Carmichael here. The surgeon's voice was clipped, professional, and devoid of pleasantries. We are on a strict timeline. The donor heart is viable for a very limited window outside the body. Your wife is sedated, but she is asking for you. We are moving her to the OR in 15 minutes. If you are not here, we will proceed. But I will tell you, a familiar face and a calm presence before a patient goes under for a procedure this significant can have a measurable impact on their initial recovery. Where are you? 15 minutes. The words were a death sentence. The hospital was a 30-minute drive away in the best of traffic. His hope, which had been rekindled into a blaze of manic creation, was suddenly extinguished, leaving behind only the cold, gray ash of despair. I can't make it, Alex whispered into the phone, his voice breaking. The fight went out of him. The sculpture, the police, the Thorns, it was all a meaningless sideshow. He had failed. Anna was going into the biggest fight of her life, and he was stuck in his driveway, a fool who had traded his last precious moments with her for a pointless act of revenge. He hung up without saying goodbye. He turned back to the police, his face a hollow mask of defeat. Okay, he said, his voice flat. Do what you have to do. Miller's expression softened with genuine pity. He had clearly overheard the desperation. Son, I understand you're in a bad situation. Just arrest him, Beatrice demanded, seeing his resolve weaken. He's admitted his guilt. Across the street, Alex noticed a teenager, probably the Watson's kid, holding up his phone. The small red light was on. He was lying. The whole pathetic, tragic circus was being broadcast to the world. A bitter, ironic laugh almost escaped Alex's lips. Miller sighed, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. He was caught between procedure and humanity, but procedure had rules. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. You are under arrest for felony destruction of property. Alex complied without resistance. It was over. He felt the cold, hard steel of the handcuffs click around his wrists. The sound was horribly final. He saw Beatrice smirk with triumph, her victory complete. He was going to a holding cell while Anna's new heart was being stitched into her chest. The injustice of it was so profound it was almost surreal. As Miller began to read him his rights, Officer Chen's phone buzzed in his pocket. Then it buzzed again. And again. He pulled it out, his brow furrowed in annoyance. He glanced at the screen, and his eyes went wide. Sarge. Chen interrupted, his voice hushed and urgent. Sarge, you need to see this. Not now, Chen, Miller said, continuing with the Miranda warning. No, Sarge, now, Chen insisted, shoving the phone into Miller's line of sight. On the screen was a social media feed. It was a live video, shaky and amateurish, taken from across the street, but it was the comments scrolling by at a dizzying speed that made Miller stop cold. That's not vandalism. That's Banksy with a welder. Oh my God, the owner is a total Karen. Blocked him in when his wife is getting a heart transplant? Hashtag justice for Alex #Lambo Karen is trending LOL. That sculpture is sick. I'd pay to see that in a gallery. Someone get this man a lawyer and a ride to the hospital. The police are arresting the wrong person. Chen swiped to another screen. A text from his own teenage daughter. It was a link to the stream. The message read, Dad, are you at the #ArtLambo house? It's going viral. The whole internet is on his side. Miller looked from the phone screen to the handcuffed sculptor, whose head was bowed in defeat. He looked at the garish, magnificent, metal-endridge sculpture dominating the driveway. He looked at Beatrice and Marcus Thorne, whose smug expressions were already becoming memes in the court of public opinion. The situation had mutated. This was no longer a simple felony complaint on a quiet suburban street. It was a global media event, unfolding in real time, and he was standing at its epicenter with his hands on the designated hero, who was also, technically, the criminal. He slowly, deliberately, took his hands off Alex. Though he didn't remove the cuffs, the air crackled with a new, volatile uncertainty. The law was clear, but the world was watching, and the world had already passed its own judgment. The world, for a long moment, was held in the strange amber of Sergeant Miller's hesitation. The handcuffs were a cold, heavy reality on Alex's wrists, but the officer's hands had frozen, his grip slackening. He was staring at the phone. In Chun's hand, as if it were a venomous snake, the faint glow of the screen reflecting in his wide eyes, the digital tide had breached the walls of the real world, and the ground was shifting under everyone's feet. Alex watched the tableau, disconnected, a spectator at his own execution. He saw the confusion ripple through the crowd of onlookers. He saw the Watson kid across the street pump his fist, realizing the power of the signal he was beaming out into the world. He saw Beatrice Thorne's victorious smirk curdle into baffled impatience. "What is going on?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "What are you waiting for? He is in handcuffs. Finish it. Take him away." "Just a moment, ma'am," Miller said, his voice strained. He finally let go of Alex and took Chun's phone, scrolling through the feed himself. His weathered face, accustomed to dealing with the messy, tangible realities of crime, was a mask of disbelief as he processed the intangible verdict of the internet. #Lambo Quran, #Justice for Alex, #ArtLambo. It was a language he didn't speak, but he understood the message perfectly. "This is a circus," Marcus Thorne boomed, stepping forward. He radiated an aura of command, a man used to things bending to his will. "Sergeant, I know Chief Reynolds personally. I can assure you he would not approve of his officers being distracted by internet nonsense. Do your job." It was the worst possible thing he could have said. Miller's eyes narrowed, a flicker of hardened pride in their depths. The mention of the chief was a thinly veiled threat, a classic power play, and in the current hypervisible context, it was gasoline on a fire. "Mr. Thorne, my job is to assess and control the situation," Miller said, his voice now dangerously. .com. And the situation just got a lot more complicated than simple property damage. As if on cue, a white van with a local news station's logo emblazoned on the side came screeching around the corner, its tires protesting. A cameraman jumped out before the vehicle had fully stopped, hoisting a large broadcast camera onto his shoulder. A reporter, a woman with immaculate hair and a microphone already in hand, was right behind him, her eyes scanning the scene and landing on the impossible sculpture. "There," she shouted to her cameraman, "get the car, and the guy in cuffs. Go, go, go." The arrival of the news crew broke the spell. The neighbors, previously hesitant observers, now surged forward, their phones all held aloft. They were no longer just watching, they were bearing witness. A chorus for the unfolding Greek tragedy. "He's the one you should be talking to," someone yelled, pointing at Marcus. "They left her to die. They think their money makes them better than everyone else," another voice chimed in. Beatrice recoiled as if struck, her face a mask of outrage. "How dare you? We are the victims here." Her cry was lost in the growing noise. Alex felt a hand on his arm. He flinched, but it wasn't a cop. It was a woman he recognized vaguely from a few houses down. She was in a sharp business suit, her expression one of intense, focused energy. "Alex Jensen," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "My name is Evelyn Reed. I live at 214. I'm a Litigator, am I correct in assuming you have not yet been provided with legal counsel? Alex, dazed, could only shake his head. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. Excellent, she said with a grim smile. She turned to Sergeant Miller, positioning herself between him and Alex. Sergeant Miller, Evelyn Reed. I'm representing Mr. Jensen. You have him in restraints, but you have not yet removed him from the scene. Am I to understand he is under arrest? Miller looked from Evelyn's hard, intelligent eyes to the news camera now pointed directly at them. He was trapped. He is being detained pending investigation for felony destruction of property. Destruction. Evelyn's eyebrow arched. That's a matter of interpretation, isn't it? My client is a known artist. Given that the property was, by your own witness's admission, deliberately used to illegally obstruct his egress during a documented medical emergency, a case could be made that my client was exercising his right to modify an abandoned nuisance on his property line. It's a creative argument, I'll grant you, but this is a very creative situation. Marcus Thorne scoffed. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. The car is worth over $500,000. And a human heart, Mr. Thorne. What's the market rate on one of those these days? Evelyn retorted without looking at him. Her words, sharp as shrapnel, hit the crowd, and a wave of murmurs rippled through them. The news camera zoomed in on Marcus's sputtering, furious face. Evelyn turned back to Miller. Furthermore, Sergeant, my client is in a state of extreme emotional distress. You have a sworn duty to consider his well-being. The clock is ticking on his wife's surgery. Arresting him now, and preventing him from reaching the hospital, would not only be a PR catastrophe for your department, but it could open you and the city up to a civil rights lawsuit that would make your head spin. So, here's what's going to happen. You are going to remove these cuffs. I will personally guarantee my client's appearance for any and all questions once his family emergency is concluded. Miller was sweating. The rulebook was on fire. Every option was wrong. Arresting Alex would ignite the internet and lead to hell from his superiors. Releasing him would validate vigilantism and bring hell from the Thorns in the DAS office. It was Alex who broke the standoff. The legal maneuvering, the media frenzy had all faded away, leaving only the searing image of Anna's face. Please, he said, his voice raw and broken, speaking to no one and everyone. Please, I don't care what happens to me. I just have to get to her. Please. The raw agony in his voice silenced the crowd. It silenced the reporter. It was the one pure, undeniable truth in the middle of the chaos. Officer Chen, who had been watching the whole exchange with a deeply troubled expression, met Alex's eyes. He had seen that look before. The look of a man whose world has been pared down to a single, desperate point. He made a decision. Sarge, Chen said quietly, stepping up to Miller, St. Jude's Hospital cardiac wing. With this traffic, it'll take a miracle to get there. He paused, then added, but we have sirens. Miller looked at his young partner. He saw the risk Chen was suggesting, the flagrant breach of protocol. He also saw it was the only humane way out. He thought of his own wife. He thought of the smug, entitled faces of the Thorns. He thought of the millions of people watching, waiting to see what kind of man he was. He gave a slow, deliberate turn, facing Marcus Thorne directly. Mr. Thorne, he said, his voice a low growl, I need to take your full, detailed statement right now, over here. He was turning his back. He was giving Chen a window of plausible deniability. Evelyn Reed didn't miss a beat. Officer Chen, she said, her voice crisp and authoritative. I am entrusting my client into your temporary care for transport on compassionate grounds. You have my word he will not be a flight risk. Chen nodded once. A silent pact passing between them, he produced the key, and with 2 quick clicks, the handcuffs fell from Alex's wrists. The feeling of freedom was so sudden, so unexpected, it almost brought Alex to his knees. Come on, Chen said, grabbing Alex's arm. My car. Now let's go. He wasn't asking. He was pulling Alex, stumbling past the stunned reporter, past the cheering neighbors, towards his patrol car. Where are you going? Beatrice shrieked, her voice cracking with disbelief as she saw her victory dissolving into an impossible escape. He's a criminal. You can't do that. No one was listening to her anymore. The crowd had formed a human corridor, parting to let Alex and Chen pass, their cheers rising in a wave. Chen shoved Alex into the passenger seat of the cruiser, and ran around to the driver's side. He hit the ignition, and the engine roared to life. He flipped a switch, and the sirens, which had announced Alex's doom, were now the sound of his salvation. The cruiser tore away from the curb, leaving the entire chaotic scene in its wake. As they sped down the street, Alex looked in the side view mirror. He saw the news camera swinging away from him and toward Marcus and Beatrice Thorne, who were now completely encircled by a hostile press and an angry mob of their own neighbors. Looming over them all was the mangled, magnificent form of the hashtag art, Lambo, gleaming in the afternoon sun, permanent, immovable monument to their spectacular, public fall from grace. The world outside the police cruiser was a watercolor painting bleeding in the rain. Streetlights, traffic signals, and storefronts smeared into streaks of red, green, and white as Officer Chen sliced through the city. The siren wasn't just a sound, it was a physical force, pushing traffic aside like a bow wave from a ship. Inside the car, the silence was thick, broken only by the crackle of the police radio and Alex's own ragged breathing. He felt strangely hollowed out, a vessel scoured clean by adrenaline. The man who had welded steel to a supercar with righteous fury was gone, replaced by a husband whose entire universe had contracted to a single point of light. Anna, they're calling it the Lamborghini, Chen said, his eyes fixed on the road, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Saw it on a news alert before we left. Alex looked at the young officer. There was a faint tremor in Chen's hands, the only sign of the monumental risk he was taking. He had crossed a line, not just for Alex, but for himself. Why? Alex asked, his voice raspy. Why did you do this? Chen navigated a hard left turn, the tires squealing in protest. My first call as a rookie was a domestic. A guy, maybe 60, having a heart attack on his kitchen floor. His wife was screaming, holding his hand. We did CPR, the paramedics came, but we were too late, by maybe 5 minutes. He paused, the memory shadowing his face. I'll never forget the look in her eyes. Nobody should have to wonder if 5 minutes could have changed everything. Just get to your wife. Man, there was nothing to say to that. Alex just nodded, a profound aching gratitude welling up in his chest. He looked out the window as the imposing structure of St. Jude's Hospital loomed into view. Chen didn't bother with the parking garage. He drove straight up to the emergency bay entrance, the cruiser jumping the curb and stopping with a jolt right beside the sliding glass doors. A flurry of motion greeted them. Nurses and orderlies, conditioned to see a police car as a sign of incoming trauma, rushed toward them. He's not injured, Chen shouted through his open window. Cardiac wing? Where is it? A nurse, a stout woman with a no-nonsense expression, pointed down a long, sterile corridor. West Tower, 4th floor. But you can't. She was talking to their taillights. Alex was already out of the car. Chen right behind him. They ran, their footsteps echoing in the unnaturally quiet hall, the faint, pervasive scent of disinfectant filling the air. This was the smell of the last 3 years of his life. They burst from the stairwell onto the 4th floor, the atmosphere immediately more tense, more hushed. This was the cardiac unit, the land of beeping machines and whispered conversations. At the far end of the hall, he saw it. A gurney, surrounded by a team in blue scrubs, was being maneuvered out of a room. On the gurney, small beneath a thin, white blanket, was Anna. Anna, the name was torn from his throat. The team paused. A tall man with tired, intelligent eyes. Dr. Carmichael turned and saw him. His expression was stern. You're cutting it closer than close, Mr. Jensen. Alex didn't hear him. He only saw his wife. Her eyes were closed, her face pale and peaceful from the sedatives, but her hand was clenched into a small fist at her side. He rushed to her, his knees weak. He took her hand, and the fist uncurled, her fingers weakly gripping his. Her eyelids fluttered open. Alex, she breathed, her voice a dreamy whisper. A faint, beautiful smile touched her lips. Knew you'd make it. I'm here, he choked out, leaning down to kiss her forehead. He could feel the faint, papery texture of her skin, the life humming just beneath it. I'm right here. I love you. You fight? You hear me? You fight hard. Always, she murmured, her eyes drifting shut again. We have to go, Alex, Dr. Carmichael said, his voice softer now. He put a hand on Alex's shoulder. She's in good hands. The best. Alex squeezed her hand one last time, then let go. He watched them wheel her away, through a set of large double doors marked Operating Theater Restricted Access. The doors swung shut, and she was gone. He stood there, staring at the blank doors, the silence roaring in his ears. He felt a hand on his shoulder again. It was Chen. Come on, let's find the waiting room. The waiting room was a small, beige purgatory populated by vinyl chairs and old magazines. Alex sank into one, the strength leaving his body all at once. Chen stood awkwardly for a moment, the embodiment of a world Alex had just left behind. I have to go, Chen said. I've got a lot of explaining to do. Chen, thank you, Alex said, looking up at him. What you did? I won't forget it. Just be there for her when she wakes up, Chen replied. He pulled a card from his wallet and placed it on the small table next to Alex. My personal cell. Don't hesitate, for anything. And then he was gone, a good man walking back to face the consequences of his kindness. Alex was alone. The silence, once a comfort, was now an enemy, filled with terrifying possibilities. He pulled out his phone, intending to text Anna's parents, and saw the screen 99+ notifications. Missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Texts from friends, from family, from neighbors, and dozens of news alerts. He clicked on one. His own face, wild-eyed and streaked with grime, stared back at him from the homepage of a national news network. The headline read, Art or Anarchy? Sculptor attacks Lamborghini after owner blocks drive to wife's transplant surgery. He scrolled, his thumb trembling. There were pictures of the sculpture from every angle, close-ups of his welds, of the rusted chains, There were clips of Evelyn Reed, his impromptu lawyer, looking fierce and brilliant as she eviscerated a stunned reporter with legal theory. There were gifs of Beatrice Thorne shrieking, already immortalized as a meme, and there were polls. Whose side are you on? The results were staggeringly one-sided, 97%. Team Alex. A GoFundMe had been started for his legal defense and/or future gallery shows. It had already surpassed $100,000. He had known it was chaotic. He hadn't understood it was a phenomenon. He hadn't just vandalized a car. He had created a narrative, a modern fable of the powerless fighting back against the callousness of the powerful. The hashtag #ArtLambo wasn't just his creation anymore. It belonged to everyone. A new alert popped up, this one from a high-profile legal news site. Thorne retains Vanguard Legal Group. Vows unprecedented lawsuit against Jensen City. The article detailed Marcus Thorne's plans. He was suing Alex for damages far exceeding the car's value, claiming emotional distress and reputational harm. He was suing the city for the police department's failure to act, for abetting a violent criminal. He was launching a multi-front war, not with blowtorches and scrap metal, but with motions, injunctions, and depositions. A form of warfare designed to bleed a person dry. Financially and spiritually. Alex felt a chill seep into his bones. He had won the battle of the driveway, but the war was just beginning, and his opponent was a dragon. He dropped the phone as if it were burning him. None of it mattered. Not the money, not the fame, not the memes, not the impending legal storm. All that mattered was what was happening. Behind those double doors. Hours passed. The beige walls of the waiting room seemed to close in. He paced. He prayed. He drank bitter coffee from a vending machine. He traced the patterns in the linoleum floor. Every time a pair of feet approached in the hallway, his head would snap up, his heart hammering in his chest. Each time they walked, past. Finally, after an eternity, the double doors swung open. It was Dr. Carmichael. He had taken off his mask and cap, his face etched with profound fatigue. He walked slowly, deliberately toward Alex, his expression unreadable, a careful, professional blankness that was somehow more terrifying than any frown. Alex stood up, his legs shaking. He searched the surgeon's face for a sign, a glimmer of good news, a hint of a smile. He found nothing. Dr. Carmichael stopped in front of him. Mr. Jensen, he began, his voice low and heavy, the surgery is more complex than we anticipated. The donor heart is in, it's beating, but your wife's system, it's been under immense strain for a long time. He paused and the silence stretched for an agonizing second. We've encountered a complication with her blood pressure. We're fighting to stabilize her. The surgeon's words hung in the sterile air, heavy and suffocating. Complication, fighting to stabilize her. The phrases were clinical, precise, yet they landed like brutal, clumsy blows. Alex felt the beige walls of the waiting room tilt, the floor dropping away beneath him. The roar in his ears, which had been a distant hum, returned with the force of a tidal wave, drowning out everything. The viral fame, the lawsuit, the sculpture, it was all a meaningless, childish tantrum in the face of this. This was the only thing that had ever mattered. What kind of complication? Alex heard himself ask, his voice sounding distant and thin, as if it belonged to someone else. Her pressure is dangerously low, Dr. Carmichael explained, his eyes full of a weary compassion that Alex found terrifying. It was the look of a man who had delivered bad news before. Her body is struggling to adapt to the new organ. It's a known risk, but her case is particularly acute. We're administering vasopressors, trying to find a combination that her system will respond to. Right now, it's a waiting game. Can I see her? The question was a raw plea. Dr. Carmichael shook his head. She's in the cardiac ICU. It's a controlled environment. We need to limit all variables. The best thing you can do right now is be ready. We'll keep you informed of any change at all. The surgeon gave a final grim nod and walked away, his exhausted footsteps receding down the hall, leaving Alex alone in the wreckage of his hope. He collapsed back into the vinyl chair, his body trembling, his mind a vortex of guilt. The stress, the frantic race to the hospital, had his drama, his selfish act of rebellion, pushed her already fragile system over the edge. He had fought a battle for her, only to potentially cost her the war. He didn't know how long he sat there, head in his hands, when a calm, firm voice cut through his stupor. Alex. He looked up. Evelyn Reed was standing before him, her face composed but her eyes filled with concern. She'd changed out of her power suit and was now in simple slacks and a sweater, a paper cup of coffee in each hand. She looked less like a litigator and more like a friend. I came as soon as I heard about the lawsuit, she said, handing him a cup. He took it, his hands shaking so badly the hot liquid sloshed onto his skin. He didn't feel it. But I take it, there's been other news, he told her, the words stumbling out in a broken, incoherent stream. Evelyn listened patiently, her expression never changing. When he finished, she didn't offer empty platitudes or reassurances. She simply nodded. Okay, she said, her tone shifting, becoming a little more like the lawyer he'd met hours earlier. Okay, one battle at a time. You focus on Anna. That is your only job right now. Let me handle the other front. The other front doesn't matter, he rasped. It does, she said firmly. Because they are using it to attack you, and you need to be strong for her. The Thorns legal team is trying to paint you as a violent, unhinged criminal. They filed a motion this evening to have the sculpture impounded as evidence. They're not just suing you. They're trying to erase the narrative, to destroy the symbol that has made you a public hero. Alex stared at her blankly. They want the car. They want the story gone, she corrected. They know that as long as that piece of art is standing in your driveway, they are the villains. But I've already filed a We're arguing it's a protected work of artistic expression, and that destroying it would be an act of censorship. It's a wild legal argument, but these are wild times. She took a sip of her coffee, her eyes scanning the hallway. The tacky media is eating it up. The GoFundMe is pushing $500,000. A gallery in New York has offered 7 figures for the work, as is, once the legal issues are cleared. Don't you see? Alex, your act of desperation connected with people in a way that Marcus Thorne's money never can. You're David, and he's Goliath. And he's so arrogant he doesn't realize that the whole world is handing you stones. Her words were meant to be encouraging, but they felt like they were describing a life that no longer belonged to him. His phone buzzed on the table, a text from an unknown number. He opened it. It was a photo of the sculpture at night, illuminated by the harsh glare of a street lamp. Below it, a message. The whole department is rooting for you and your wife. Stay strong, Chen. A single tear traced a path through the grime on Alex's cheek. Before he could reply, the doors to the waiting room slid open, and a middle-aged couple rushed in, their faces pale with terror and exhaustion. Anna's parents, Bill and Mary. Alex, Mary cried, rushing to him and pulling him into a hug that felt both desperate and accusatory. We came as soon as we could. We heard there was a complication. Bill, a stoic man who always seemed uncomfortable with displays of emotion, stood behind her, his hands clenched. He looked at Alex, and in his eyes, Alex saw the question. He had been screaming at himself for hours. Did you do this? He explained the situation again, his voice cracking under the weight of their combined grief. He saw the flicker of blame in Bill's eyes soften into shared fear. They were all in the same boat now, adrift on a terrifying sea of uncertainty, waiting for a sign from a shore they couldn't see. Stars bled into one another. Evelyn became their anchor, handling the logistics of the outside world, fielding calls from the media, from her legal team, from the police union who were now providing pro bono support for Officer Chen. Alex, Bill and Mary sat together, a silent trinity of fear, the conversation exhausted, leaving only the shared, rhythmic pulse of anxiety. Late into the night, Dr. Carmichael appeared again. His face was grim. Her pressure isn't responding to the medication as we'd hoped, he said, getting straight to the point. Her kidneys are showing signs of distress. We have one more option, a high-risk experimental procedure to implant a temporary ventricular assist device. It could provide the support her heart needs to regulate, to give her body time to accept the transplant. High-risk, Bill asked, his voice trembling. It's an invasive procedure, and in her current state, the anesthesia alone is a significant danger. There's a chance she may not survive it, the doctor said, his honesty a cold, sharp blade. But without it, her chances are negligible. We believe her system will fail within the next few hours. He looked directly at Alex. She signed papers designating you as her medical power of attorney. The decision is yours. Alex, the world stopped. Every eye was on him. Anna's life was in his hands. He felt the crushing weight of the choice, a burden so immense it threatened to shatter him. What would Anna want? He closed his eyes, picturing her face, her fierce spirit, the way she refused to give up. Even when her own body had betrayed her, she wasn't a passive victim, she was a fighter. She had fought for 3 long years. She would not want to go down without throwing one last punch. He opened his eyes and met the surgeon's gaze. Do it, Alex said, his voice clear and certain. She's a fighter. Give her something to fight with. Dr. Carmichael nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. We'll begin immediately. He left, and the waiting resumed, now charged with an even more potent, more terrifying brand of hope. They were all in. They had pushed all their chips to the center of the table. An hour later, Evelyn's phone rang. She listened, her face hardening. I see, she said. File the appeal, and leak the injunction to the press. I want everyone to see what kind of man Marcus Thornton really is. She hung up and turned to Alex. Thorne's lawyers won. The judge granted the emergency injunction. They're sending a court-appointed crew to seize the sculpture in the morning. They're going to dismantle it. The news barely registered. His creation, the symbol of his rage and love, was going to be destroyed. A day ago, it would have devastated him. Now it was just a distant echo. As the weight of that new defeat settled in the room, a young nurse quietly entered. She wasn't a surgeon, just a nurse on the ICU floor. She looked at Alex, and for the first time that night, he saw something in a medical professional's eyes that wasn't pity or grim resolve. It was a tiny, fragile spark of optimism. Mr. Jensen, she said softly, as if not wanting to startle. The delicate balance of the moment? Dr. Carmichael asked me to tell you. The vat is in. It's working. She paused, a small smile touching her lips. Her blood pressure is responding. It's the first positive sign we've seen. She's not out of the woods, not by a long shot, but for the first time tonight, she's fighting back.